What is going on, Diablo 2 fans? Dobrunsky here, and today I'm super excited to be covering the new Fireclaw Maul hybrid variant. Now, this is a build that I have tried so hard to try and get like an optimal setting in so many different scenarios in single player offline, and even the last ladder I was messing around with the Werewolf Fireclaw variant. It's a really interesting build because anything you run into that is not fire immune with really good gear, you can completely one-tap, like literally just one-tapping through everything. But you guys know that there is a ton of fire immunes in hell difficulty, so it was a really interesting build, but it would struggle in a lot of areas like Chaos Sanctuary, Venom Lords. You'd just be stuck there grilling on like physical damage from Grizz Caddy or something like that, which is very slow clear speed. But that has now been fixed in this PTR for 2.4. It might change a little bit, but they essentially reduced the total number of synergies that Fireclaw has. So previously in LOD, Fireclaw would receive 22% damage per level synergies from 4 different skills. So by the time you maxed out Fireclaw and those 4 synergies, you're basically left with nothing else to sort of hybrid out the build spec. But that's not the case anymore, because Fireclaw now has increased base damage and only receives 22% per level from Firestorm and Molten Boulder. So this allows you to use other hard-hitting physical weapons and pair that with a really strong Maul and Shockwave to get a huge portion of physical damage paired with a huge portion of Fireclaw damage. So you have great stun crowd control, great physical damage, and great fire damage. In this build, it does suffer from movement speed and AoE, so if you were to compare it directly to a Frenzy Barbarian, you don't get around quite as quick. If you were to pair it to a Whirlwind Barbarian, you don't really have the same amount of AoE, but I think this build has more survivability due to the stun control. And I also don't like barbs, you guys know that by now. I actually would rate this with high-end gear better than most Barbarian specs. Again, let me know in the comment section below if you guys agree or disagree, but it will have a budget variant as well that uses like Phoenix, or excuse me, that uses Spirit instead of Phoenix, different body armor instead of Fortitude. So again, I'll have timestamps in the description below for those setups. So we'll just jump into the attributes now. So because this build has a ton of stun effect from Maul and Shockwave, I decided to go with a max damage output variant. So I have enough dexterity to equip the Grief Phase Blade, nothing into Vitality, nothing in Energy, and then everything else into Strength. So 468 Strength points. Again, you guys will see in the gameplay, the build is actually a lot more tanky and has better survivability than you think, and that's purely just because of Shockwave and the stun effect from Maul. So again, if you wanted to play it more safe, you could easily go like 200 Strength, rest into Vitality, use Oak Sage, and you could have like 4,500 life, again at the expense of physical damage, but I just wanted to kind of like push the extremes for this video. Now for the skill tree, first we'll start off with, I guess, summoning, because it's very simple. I put 1 hard point into Oak Sage, and then 1 hard point into Heart of the Wolverine. I didn't max Heart of the Wolverine because you get more damage per level from putting points into Werebear. So with everything else I invested, I just didn't have any other leftover skill points. So that's why I have 1 into each. And the cool thing about this is that you could, in theory, use Oak Sage if you wanted a little bit more plus life. Now for Elemental, I put 20 hard points into Firestorm, and then 20 hard points into Molten Boulder. These are damage synergies of Fireclaw. And then for the Shapeshifting tree, 20 hard points into Fireclaw, 1 hard point into Lycanthropy, Werewolf, and Feral Rage. That's just to unlock Fireclaw. Also, Lycanthropy is a really good 1-point wonder. I mean, 80 additional % max life for 1 point is pretty insane. Then I have 1 hard point into Shockwave. This gives me 8.8 second stun duration. It's reduced in hell difficulty, but it's still really good. And then I have 20 hard points into Werebear, and then the remainder went into Maul. So Werebear get a bunch of additional defense and damage. You also get additional max life when you transform into Werebear. Again, that's how I kind of get away with 728 life right now, but when I actually jump into the gameplay, it's not too bad. But the interesting thing about Maul is, see that scaling damage? When it's fully procced up, I'm adding an additional 570% damage to every single Fireclaw strike, along with stun. So I'm going to do kind of a numbers comparison value here so you guys can get an idea why like this new Werebear is so much better than what it was. So I will cover the gear in a second. I just want to fully proc up. I'm going to switch just temporarily to Breath of the Dying, just because it gives a better idea of showing the tooltip damage numbers. Due to the hidden damage on Grief. I just want to fully proc up Maul. Okay. So with Maul fully procced, you can see it's 16 to 25k Fire Claw, plus the additional physical damage, and then the stun and additional attack rating we get from Maul. So very, very powerful stuff. Although I do think it's best to use Grief. You attack quicker and it's more raw damage. That just gives you a better idea of the damage values. Now as far as the gear goes, for the expensive variant, let's start off with the inventory first. I have Torchin and Annie, different shapeshifting skillers, and then different max damage, attack rating, plus life small charms. For this build, I think shapeshifting skillers are far better than max damage, attack rating, plus life. That's because every single additional skill here, you're getting more Fire Claw damage, you're getting more plus life from Lycanthropy, and you're getting more damage and defense from Werebear, and you're getting more damage and attack rating from Maul. So I just feel like that is so much better than only focusing on some additional more raw damage with max damage, attack rating, plus life, grand charms, small charms. Now for the rest of the gear, I guess offhand, CTA and Spirit. Main hand, for the weapon and shield combo, I'm using Grief paired with Phoenix. So there's a lot of different variants like Shield, Grizz Caddies where you can attack really fast. They don't have the raw ED though. So this combination of shield and, sword and shield gives me really good raw damage, deadly strike, negative fire res, and also enhanced damage on the offhand shield as well. So I just feel like it's the perfect complement. Everything else is kind of your go-to meta melee stuff. So High Lords, Fortitude, String of Ears, Ravenfrost, Dual Leech Ring, Laying of Hands, Gloves, Gore Rider Boots. Now the helmet, I decided to use the new Runeward Flickering Flame. So this is a pretty rare base to get, something that has 3 to Fire Claw, 3 to Werebear. But it gives additional negative res, 6 to Fire Claw, so it's a pretty wicked Runeward, also with the Resist Fire Aura. You could easily use like Ravenlore or Fire Faceted Jalals, but I just thought it'd be cool to use new Runeward. That's all the Druid's gear though. Mercenary is using Treachery, Chammed, V-Gaze, and Infinity, so Infinity is to boost the Fire Claw damage. Again, I will do a like Spirit Shield, Insight Mercenary kind of combo setup. As far as the gameplay goes though, it's very simple. You want to make sure that you have your Maul completely procced up. And once you do, you just switch to Fire Claw. Single target monsters, I'll just alternate back and forth between keeping Maul up and then using Fire Claw. When we get into big clumps of monsters, that's when you're going to switch out and use your Shockwave. You're going to stun everything, and then you can just maul away. That's why I feel completely fine having like 2k life, because everything that I'm hitting is stunning. And we will jump up to Players 3 difficulty to do more of the Chaos Run. But again, the biggest issue with this build is really just lack of AoE now, and I just think that that's nothing you'll ever be able to fix unless you add like splash damage or something. But this is so much better than the LOD Fire Claw setup, because we still have a ton of fire damage, but at the same time we can stack a ton of physical damage to take out fire immune Venom Lords. And again, once I do, like this is a big pack, couple shockwaves, and then just switch to Maul and Fire Claw. And we'll pump it up to Players 3 once we take out like 2 of the seals. Get a ton of fire res from Flickering Flame as well. That's really cool. I think a big underrated thing that people might be sleeping on with Flickering Flame is that you can now put a different socket in a Daryl's Visage for your Mercenary if you're using the Runeward, because you don't have to worry about counteracting that fire res anymore. Couple guys, send a couple shockwaves in. Again, whatever, like, maybe lack of AoE that we're trading off to a Whirlwind Barbarian, we're gaining back with crowd control with Shockwave. So literally just Shockwave the whole Venom Lord pack, and all these Fire Immune guys, we're just relying on a really good Fizz damage. Did lose our Spirit, end of the world. We'll pump it up to players 3 now. And again, this is not like an ideal area to test this because there's a ton of fire immunes. You could just rake through areas like the Icy Cellar that have no fire immunes. And Decrep is a bit punishing too for a melee setup. And I should know that there is different variations. I'm sure, like, if you really wanted to, you could maybe forgo the Maul combination and you could maybe use something like Hurricane. I just can't see how, like, 1500k Hurricane damage, though, would outweigh, like, the massive amount of physical damage you get from Maul and the stun effect. But now that they've reverted the IS, like, calculation that they did, this build is so much better than what it was in LOD. And again, we'll show off a budget build. We'll do like Eldritch and Shank as well. Just imagine this build if at some point they ever added like splash damage effect so we could have area of effect damage. You'd be one-tapping everything in the area of effect instead, like in the area effect of splash instead of a single target. Okay, a final Diablo kill. Then we'll switch to a more budget setup. Do Eldritch and Shank.
Not even death can save you from me.
Pretty quick Diablo kill as well, I think. Okay, so now we'll jump forward to, we'll go to a player's 1 difficulty. I'm going to switch to some more budget gear. I'll quickly show that off, and then we'll do Eldritch and Shank out all of this top tier gear. Okay, so for the budget variant of this Fireclaw Druid, I switched out the body armor to Treachery, switched out the helmet to Jalal's Mane. So this is a fire faceted Jalal's Mane, so maybe plain Jalal's will be a little bit more appropriate for budget, but I don't actually have one, so this will have to do. Switched out the shield for Spirit, weapon, Oath, and Ethereal Berserker Axe, so Shale, Pole, Mal, and Lum. Rest of the same gear, Dual Leech, Go Rider Boots, High Lords. Got rid of most of the inventory for what I had room for, and I got rid of the Torch and Annie. So Mercenary is using Obedience, Treachery, and E-Gaze. So definitely not total budget, but way less expensive gear than what I had before. And you could switch to, like, you probably would want to readjust the, I'm still max vitality, so you, excuse me, still max strength, so you probably want to adjust that. I just realized that now. But we'll do players 1, Eldritch and Shank. And you could maybe not include the CTA buff as budget, but same thing, some shockwaves. Build up Maul, and then just Fireclaw away. That's a little bit of a scuffed budget. I did use CTA, and really I should be like 350 plus points in Vitality. That's why my life is so low, but I really just want to show that, like, with Shockwave, and a combination of Maul, and moderately priced gear, you can still clear everything pretty good. Not quite to the Grief and Phoenix level, of course. Here's Fire Immune, Eldritch and Shank, with relying on physical damage from Maul. And there's a cleared run with, like, Obedience, Mercenary. I don't know how well Fireclaw on a playthrough would work. I would still probably switch to a caster. But that's everything I wanted to cover for the Fireclaw setup, guys. I think it's largely improved. Again, there is alternative options, like potentially maybe investing into Hurricane, using Hurricane and Fireclaw, although I really think the best variant is to just stick with Maul. But again, let me know in the comment section below if you guys have messed around with this build, if you would tweak the gear, or if what I showed you might actually interest you. in trying out the Fireclaw setup instead of kind of your standard melee stuff. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, you can throw a like on it, that'd be awesome. And I'll catch you on the next video or live stream. Peace out.